Welcome back to another episode of Practice Underwater. And this is a segment that has been very popular on the Shared Practices podcast. And we took a little break from doing it. By little, I mean multiple years. And now we are back on. And today I have with me Tom. And so Tom, this is always there's always a delicate balance being a Practice Underwater guest where I want to hear about you, your practice, your life, especially your journey into ownership. But at the same time, your name is not really Tom. And so, just kind of for our audience here, why don't you just let them get to know you a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I guess I'll just kind of start on my dental journey. I graduated in 2017. So I've been out of school for about 8 years now, and yeah, kind of starting to get the hang of dentistry a little bit. But yeah, I was married in undergrad, and we had all of our four kids during undergrad and dental school. So,
Wow.
so before I was done graduated dental school, we were a family of six. And so yeah, that was a lot. I have an amazing wife, and she kind of held down the fort and allowed me to have kids climbing over me with some headphones on so I could try to study. And yeah, we made it through.
That's awesome. And so, you graduated dental school. Talk me through so we're what, 8 years out now?
Yeah.
So walk me through the last 8 years.
Yeah. So I graduated, and like I think a lot of naive dentists, maybe I had kind of a practice that I'd been talking to um for a while. I had been talking to the owner, and I kind of knew him, and he was saying, yeah, come practice with me. We can end up being partners. He's um probably 15 years older than me. So I thought, this is going to be a good situation because I can kind of come in there, work, learn the ropes a little bit from him. Really nice guy. And then, yeah, we'd live happily ever after, and I'd buy the practice, and we'd be partners, and we'd be good to go. I was a little naive, I think, financially too, on how much without a line of credit or student loans it costs to really run a family of six and support a family of six. And so I got out, and I quickly realized that a lot of the patients want to see the owner dentist and don't really want to see me. And that's definitely their right. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. I'll just kind of bide my time. Not a ton of new patients, but a lot of the new patients I would see. But yeah, it just wasn't keeping me really busy enough to pay the bills. I was literally doing everything. I got like some OR time, and I was doing like some pedo sedation cases like right out of school. And I was doing a wisdom teeth. I was doing molar endo. I was doing everything I could to be able to produce because my life literally was depending on it with my family. And so yeah, a lot of pressure, and as everyone knows, student loans and all that kind of comes with that. And so yeah, the writing was kind of on the wall there after about 6 months, but I stuck it through at that practice for about a year and a half, and never really getting ahead. And office manager there was kind of a saboteur a little bit. So she would really pad the owner's stats and keep him happy, which I mean, rightfully so, it's his practice. But just wasn't quite what I was expecting coming out of school. We had bought a house, and we thought our future was going to be there. But anyways, that was pretty devastating. That kind of fell apart. I took a job while I was doing this job, flying into a place that was very remote and doing dentistry for 12 hours a day for 5 days for a week, and then flying back out. And so they would fly me in, I'd do the dentistry, fly out. And so yeah, that was a good experience. I gained a lot of experience from that. And then I transitioned to this next practice that we moved about an hour and a half, actually. Sorry, it was about a few hours away. And it was honestly, I met the owner. We meshed pretty well. Met the office manager. She seemed great. And yeah, we came together pretty good. he said, "You're going to be able to make this much money, and if you can't, you're doing something wrong." And so I said, "Okay, well, this is going to be my real test in dentistry to see if I can do this." And it was as advertised. And so I started being busier. I started being able to produce more. It took a lot of financial stress off. But I was working, 11 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. And so it was pretty intense for a while. And then I was able to cut back a little bit once we kind of got our heads above water, and we're feeling a little bit better about our financial. Not that we were feeling good because we still had a lot of debt, but a lot better than we were just out of school. So
Maybe I have questions for you now.
sure. Yeah.
How long have you owned the practice?
The practice that I'm at, I have owned since 2020.
Okay. And explain to me the collections revenue of the office historically when you purchased.
Yeah, so when I purchased it, it was probably doing about 1.1 million. And collections were at, collections are pretty good where I'm at. And so it was at like, 98, 99% that they were collecting on their production. So
Yeah, so like
s- so really
almost
good.
1.1.
Yeah.
And what was the purchase price of the office?
The purchase price was 1.75 million.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Um, any chance? I mean, I don't want to reveal your location, but are you in Canada?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, so I could tell a little bit in the way you were talking,
Yeah.
but also when I go to the purchase price of the practice, I really understand that you're in
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
Okay, so practice 1.75, and maybe you could just talk me through. Okay, so what's the practice doing last 12 months revenue top line?
But the last 12 months, I mean, our last calendar year, I
Yeah,
think,
that's fine.
yeah, I think we
Same
ended
thing.
at about 1 point 1.65 in our in our collections.
Okay.
And yeah, one I think it looks like 1.68 was what we collected. So
And Tom, if you've noticed, like I get pretty rapid fire with the questions,
yeah, that's fun.
and this is going to be like the first 20 minutes or so. I'm going to be asking a lot of questions,
Sure.
and then I'm going to try to get you to where we're trying to go. So I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, definitely.
And remember, no one knows who you are. So now I ask the next question. 1.65 million was the maybe 2024 calendar year's collections. How much did you
Yeah.
take home of that after you pay the note for the practice and all of your expenses?
After I pay the note and all my expenses,
Like, what's your take home?
that was only about, so that is not including what I'm paying myself, correct?
No, that is including what you're paying yourself. So what you pay yourself and the profit so essentially all the money to you did you get of the
Yeah.
1.65?
So that was about 450,000.
Okay. Yeah, and okay, so that's helpful. Now, so I have the advantage for our audience here. I have the advantage of a very helpful form that's 3 pages long that Tom has filled out for us. So I'm gonna ask the next round of questions to be kind of like geared towards the responses. So when I read through your form, Tom, I think a few things really pop out at me. I think the maybe if you could just for our audience talk us through your procedure mix. So what's your clinical box?
Yeah, so I do not a lot, very, very limited molar endo, but I'll do, any other endo really. And then, um, you know, most extraction cases I'll take on, but we don't do a lot of sedation currently. And so not a lot of IV, bigger cases like that. I don't do a lot of wisdom teeth unless they're, partially erupted, that type of thing. And then obviously crown bridge fillings, all that kind of stuff. But no implants currently or anything like that. So mostly bread and butter.
Yeah, so bread and butter with some endo and some extractions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. And if I were to just like if I were to distill down I want, like you're a patient coming in, in this example. And, anytime we're doing an exam, we're trying to figure out what's their chief complaint.
Mhm.
So if I had to ask you, what's your chief complaint? Like, what's not working right now, and what pain point is that causing?
I would just say my chief complaint is um I've always had a little bit of difficulty of knowing where to go in dentistry once I got to kind of this point. And what I mean by that is I wasn't sure if I go bigger, or I stay single owner and just stay really lean and try to get my overhead down. I was working with a group and they really, really pushed hard on expansion. But that comes with its own things. And when you're in a little bit more of a competitive market with a lot of dentists here, it just worries me a little bit. And so I guess I'm really at just kind of a bit of a crossroads of not knowing if I should do a bunch more CE and, try to become kind of this super dentist, or if I should just kind of stay where I'm at and just kind of continue on like this.
Okay. Help me understand, what's your new patient flow? Like, how many new patients do you see per month on average?
I would say our average is probably around 40, mid 40s.
Okay. And do you do any marketing?
No, not really. All our marketing is just kind of internal marketing. So
Okay.
we don't really do any external marketing.
So now, if I were to say, I'd say, okay, well, you're making $450,000 a year. I'm assuming you're working. It looks like you're working 4 to 5 days a week. Is that about right?
Yes. Yeah.
What's wrong with the current configuration? Is there anything wrong with it, or is it just like I just feel like I need to know what's next, but not necessarily anything's wrong with right now?
Yeah, I would say because I was with I won't mention what group it is, but it was a really expensive kind of coaching group, and they kind of promised the world a little bit of being able to hit kind of the 2 million mark, and have bring on an associate and have a little more free time with the family and stuff like that. So right now I would say I'm working a little more than I'd like to. I'm working, 4 10-hour days, and then every other Friday, basically, it turns out to be. And but that is a shorter day. We work 8 to 2 on those Fridays. But so yeah, I'm probably working a little bit more than I would like. But then again, we expanded the hours with this group to kind of be able to grow, but we didn't really see the growth that we would have hoped. So now I'm kind of stuck with these hours and not wanting to, upset staff or lose staff over changing my hours too often and too frequently. And so I'm kind of stuck in this hour configuration, not really knowing where to go from here, because I'm happy to expand. I really like progress. I really like coaching. And so I'm definitely open to growth. So
Yeah. So you have a very interesting answer here. To like, so you want to work at most 4 days a week. You want to pick up grafting and placing implants. Potentially, it seems like you really like the practice of, like, even earlier you talked about this expansion of your clinical box. Um, just kind of help me understand, like, do you enjoy clinical CE, going, like, kind of picking up new skills, growing that skill set? Because it seems like I noticed that theme is woven in between, your form and your answers.
yeah, I do enjoy that, but I really enjoy the surgical side of things. And so that is really appealing to me, and maybe, getting into maybe some wisdom teeth and things like that. But I also have, I think, a little bit of a case of imposter syndrome when it comes to taking CE, and, being a little nervous to be able to implement some of these new things that I'm learning. And I've been really handcuffed because of, and I'm not trying to put it all on this coaching that I took, but it was a very high monthly fee. And so I haven't really been able to, put some money away for a CBCT, or put some money away for a scanner, and be able to kind of get into implants in that way. But But now that I'm finishing that, I have an opportunity to do some of those things. So yeah, I do
Yeah,
like
we don't have to
some of
talk
that
about the
stuff.
company. I'm just curious, what fee is this per month? Like, what's the, well, you're anonymous. I don't know the company name. I'm just curious, what is the fee?
Um, so American to Canadian, it with exchange, it transferred to be about $10,000 a month.
Wow. For practice management guidance?
Yes.
That's a hefty fee. You're right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty high. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So no, we don't have to get into that.
For
So
sure.
let's move on.
Yeah.
So I think okay. So there's something else really interesting here, which is you have personal goals. You want to go on a big family trip every year. You want, and I really like you have like increasing your strength, your flexibility, your cardio, your balance, your mobility, like very physical, like your mental health, body health, all of that. And then also like becoming less than a 10 handicap in golf. So like help me understand, like, I really like all those goals. I actually shot for the 10 under handicap or the 10 handicap in golf one. And like, I'm interested in like how much weight or draw energetically do you feel towards the personal goals compared to the professional goals? Like which ones do you find yourself more excited about?
Um, I mean 100%. Okay, so you said what percent? I was gonna say 100% the the personal ones, but that's not true because I do have some excitement with the practice goals and with the business goals. But I would probably say it's two-thirds excitement for, the personal goals and maybe a third for the business and practice.
So it seems like kind of what I'm hearing you say is, I've made some decisions. So like let me just kind of take a step back and then we'll take a step forward.
Mhm.
So we believe that at shared practices, one of the most important things that we believe is that the owner of the practice needs to configure the practice with their personal life as the driver behind the practice decisions. So it's like, maybe there's a best practice on how to best operate your business. However, if that is at odds with your personal life, then your personal life ought to drive the show in terms of it's a private practice, right? That's kind of the benefit. So it seems like there was an inverse there where these extended hours that you did put your professional growth ahead of your personal life, where now you've experienced a personal life inconvenience and maybe a draw on like the sustainability of what you're doing because of what you've reconstituted with your hours. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, yep, absolutely.
Now, like, so explain to me the space next door. So you own the building and there's a space next door that your practice can grow into. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So we're kind of in a little condo kind of strip mall kind of complex, and so I own the one side, and that was originally it was originally built out for 10 ops. But I think they just said, you know what, let's cut it off at five. Let's see how the practice does. And then if we ever wanted to, we could expand. So that got sold off. And I recently was able to buy that back, but it is not dental ready at all. It was a medical kind of building. So it's smaller than the space I have right now, but it could fit the other five ops that it was originally designed to do. And I have the plans for all of that and stuff if it ever came to that.
Was this like an expensive purchase of real estate?
No, it wasn't too bad. I would say it wasn't the right time to be able to do it, but I just did it because I didn't know if the opportunity would come up again.
Got it. So, okay. So now, yeah, I think I've been kind of poking around looking for. Now I'm actually conflicted. So usually in these kind of question answers beginnings, I find myself getting more clear with time, and I find myself getting less clear, not less clear, but equally unclear as I
Mm,
was at the beginning. And let me just kind of walk you through where I'm at. So, this 450K that you made last year, in my head, I'm thinking, well, potentially we can add back 10,000 per month and the 450K is 570K. Is that a correct assumption? That
Yeah.
without this consulting that you're doing now, like your income should be like, markedly higher?
Yes. Yeah. It could be depending on if I wanted to, reinvest that back in the practice or if I wanted to, but you're right. Like that margin would be there for sure.
Yeah. So, and I understand your hesitation around the team hours component of this, and I'm very sympathetic to that. I get it. But I kind of feel like, so like the indications for a group practice where it's like, okay, you own this real estate, let's blow down the door, let's build these ops, let's get more patients. Like, you haven't really been hitting the the pain points that a typical solo to group transition doctor would. So typically somebody who goes from a solo to group transition, they're telling us a lot of things like, I want it to build a business underneath myself. I don't want the practice to be wholly dependent on me. I really like growth. I want to drive this. Like, there's like a different set of sentiment and kind of tone that I get in that type of conversation.
Mhm.
And what I'm hearing you say is more the solo, wanting to go to that smart solo where you're like, I want to make more, I want to spend more time with family, but like the financial stress, more debt, like more investment in marketing, like you don't strike me as somebody who is going to be excited by those problems. And that's kind of where I'm at. So it's like, you kind of like, the straightforward answer would be, well, if you go to a group practice, you could cut your hours and you have the facility for a group practice. You don't market, you get 40 patients. So like, you kind of have all of the like the things right in front of you to make group practice a potential option. But what's kind of giving me pause on that is when I'm talking to you, you strike me more as a smart solo where you just want to have the high income. You want to have, maybe work be a lesser part of what you're doing, and then open up space in your life for the personal pursuits. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're making $500,000 a year, let's say you would reinvest half of what you were spending in that consulting company and you kept the other half. If you're reinvesting 500,000 per, if you're making 500,000 per year, um, is something broken financially in your life, or is that like comfortable?
No, no, and I think that's very comfortable right now, and I think we're to the point um that our kids are getting a little bit older, and so they're demanding even more, and so right now I would say we're kind of in the thick of our financial need kind of period of life. I mean,
Ah,
not that there isn't a time when you need money but I think I'm feeling it probably the most right now. And so yeah, it's definitely we're very comfortable and we're happy that way. Um it if that answers that question.
yeah. So I guess, like, I see two paths. I really do. I see the path that I'm leaning towards, which is, um, dialing in. I think that like cutting, becoming a smart solo, as we would call it, where it's like you take your current practice dynamics, you say, okay, what's the perfect schedule for me? Then you ask yourself that question, you really get honest with yourself, and you make that your schedule. Then you then reorganize the entire business around that schedule to have maximum productivity, and you just produce and collect your income goals in that constrained time horizon and give yourself back the time while keeping your income flat. That's like option one. And
Hmm.
potentially you can grow your income too, right? But like, I think the first objective is make the same working less. Then after that, potentially try to make more. But that's the direction that I'm just feeling is appropriate given, the form I'm reading, the conversation we're having. So I'm just curious, like, how does that land on your end?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely parts of me that are excited by that, but I would say in dentistry, I probably like the business more, but I'm actually, I've always been open for growth and professional growth. And this is a time when my family, you know, needs the income, and also a time when my kids are in school most of the day, and so I'm fine to be at work for some of that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I like growth in all aspects of my life, and so I just want to continue to grow. But everyone has always kind of told me within dentistry, it's always kind of seemed like, well, if you're growing, that's not just like you adding procedures. That's like you getting an associate, you know what I mean? That's like you getting more space. And as much as I like dentistry, I would really like to work less in dentistry, but still have a successful business. So I guess that
So
that is still one of those two directions that you're talking about.
well, look, but let me give you the kind of the maybe where my head was at, and I should have articulated this. So when you go from a solo to group transition, there's this period in the middle that we call the ugly duckling phase. And what
Right.
happens during that period is you take on costs without the requisite sort of collections coming in to kind of like, really pay for that cost. So your income goes down for a period. And I think sometimes, like, you know, like if you can make, what is a mild pain point a moderate to like heavy pain point, right? And I think the one thing that we could do on your life that would make it like from this level of stress to a higher degree of stress would be give you more work and less money. And I think that that would really do it. So I think
Yeah.
that, like, from my perspective, I almost view phases of life as a really important element to your story, which
Okay.
is in this phase of life, maybe it makes sense to stay solo, and maybe in the next phase of life, it makes sense to transition to a group when your personal life is more in a place where you can withstand that ugly duckling. So, like, if I were to think of your career horizon, I would think maybe where we're heading towards is like the ultimate non committal answer, which is kind of seems like it's what resonant is like this idea of preparing for a group as a solo, and then that's like maximum income in that approach. And then you transition to group at a time in your life where the personal expenses aren't as high. And then you're like, all right, but maybe you haven't yet. You still have some time left, right? Because you would ideally want to transition to a group before you were getting ready to retire and sell the practice, so that you're selling a group practice as opposed to a solo practice. So I would think that that's kind of like where I actually feel like I'm getting more clear as we're going, which is like it seems like you have the idea for a group, but I think the time in your life may not be in. How many years do you think this window that you're discussing is?
I think I'm becoming more clear too. I think, well, my youngest is 8. And so 10 years, in 10 years, uh, you know, no one's at home anymore. But not that would have to wait 10 years to create that transition. But even in 10 years, I still have a lot of time left in my career. So,
Yeah, and that's kind of the benefit of, I have multiple sets of kids,
yeah.
and I had one set in dental school, and then I had one set in my early 30s.
Mhm.
And so it's like I kind of have the experience of both, and being such a young parent, you kind of have the benefit of having your kids grow older while you are still quite young. And so I think
Mhm.
that that might be more of your path is
Yeah.
like, you get it on the back end where you still have a lot of career left without kids in the house.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the direction that I'm leaning towards is let's, as a solo, prepare your practice for a group, um, but stay a solo until it's like really ready to go for a group. And then you could potentially have a very fast transition to a group with very little ugly duckling phase. And you can give yourself optionality for as long as possible. And I think there will be an accidental impact on your income where it should go up a little bit, but that's like we're really more focused on increasing the patient base size and getting it ready for that group practice. And naturally that will just have a positive impact on the top line. But that, in fact, I don't think that's like you didn't come here for higher income. Like, I get that, you would like that and everyone would like, but I think that we always try to, like I said before, right, the personal life and the kind of the bigger desires, definitely drive that type of, decision making. So does that now we've both been clear and unclear. So like, how does that feel to you kind of, just as a general direction?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think that's kind of been in my mind what I've envisioned because, like you said, it's a difficult time to really cut back, which could be significant on my income right now, just because I have so many things kind of pulling at that, especially even just paying back my student loans right now that are a big part of that. And so yeah, I think that has made it a little more clear for me too on a good direction.
Yeah. So a couple other things before we go on to our part two. Are you like aggressively paying down debt right now?
I would say as aggressive as as aggressive as I'm able, I am. Yeah.
Okay. And that's student loans and practice debt.
Yeah, I would say the practice debt, especially with that monthly fee that I had, has taken a bit of a back burner, and also until I think I got a little more clarity on equipment or what direction the practice was going to go. I kind of paused any aggressive payback of any sort of business loan, and so that has always just kind of been the payments.
Yeah.
I haven't really dove into that aggressively yet.
But you're 5 years in on that, right?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I have 5 years left.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you make 10-year loan, like you're 5 years in, just kind of, yeah. I don't have the, like there's this whole movement of people on the internet. There's this whole thing of like pay down your debt as aggressively as possible. I
Hmm.
don't tend to resonate with that. So like, that's not really the message you're going to be getting from me, to all those that do it, power to you.
Yeah.
But that's not really the direction I'm going to be heading here. So maybe then so you kind of said again, like, on these interviews, like I really listen to what you're saying. And at times you say different things. So I want to get a little clear on a couple of things.
Hmm.
So the extended hours pain point that you have, and then also like the, you said my kids are at school, I can work a lot, but I don't like working this much. So if you had to say like, what are your ideal hours? If I were to just say like, all right, you know what, Tom, we've made the agreement that in this phase of your life, we are going to absolutely max out this practice with just you as the solo dentist, and you're going to pick your ideal hours, and we're just going to max it at those hours, and you're going to have the ability to, like, during this phase that's going to be a little bit more long, be more patient. You're going to focus on the personal life stuff, and the practice is going to be kind of a secondary focus. So like, what hours of operation, just like forget about the team, forget about patients, just like forget about all that crap and just focus on what you want. What do you want in terms of your working hours?
I would say ideally, in an ideal world, it would be 8 to 4, Monday to Thursday, and limited hours on Friday or something like that, or even like I'm doing right now, working every other Friday or something like that, or not even Fridays.
Yeah. Um, could we do like a not even Fridays?
Yeah, that would be excellent.
Okay. So, okay. So, so we have a dream of a Monday through Thursday 8 to 4 schedule, right?
Yeah,
So it's like the exact opposite as this consulting company is like. This
basically.
consulting
Yeah,
company is like, yeah, 8 to 4. You never want to work those hours, right? Because the people who get off from work are not going to be able to come into your practice.
that's
And
right.
so, sorry if I'm going in another direction and it's a little bit of a zigzag, but I
No,
think
that's
at the
fine.
end of the day, like I just have to give my organic advice without
Yep.
really considering the outside noise.
Yep.
So I think I'm very clear, and I'm going to wrap this up for our audience, and then we'll come back next part for part 2, where we're really going to dive into your practice more tangibly in detail and talk about how to execute this, looking at team members, operatories, hygiene days, the whole deal. And so, Tom came to us. We have a form here, and expressed some things in the form: wanting a higher income, paying off debt, wanting more time for family, not liking extended hours. And where Tom is not a clinical adventurous dentist. Like, I think that's something I've kind of gotten pretty clearly from Tom. Tom does have the desire to grow, but also, is not one of those people. And I'm like this too, where it's like, I have to feel like I can like really assuredly do a great service before I feel comfortable instituting that into my clinical mix.
Yeah.
And I think that some people can just feel comfortable with themselves winging things clinically, and I don't have that gene.
Yeah.
Like I don't have the comfort with that. So I think that's kind of how I think of Tom as well. And so in this interview, it's a lot of back and forth trying to figure out the right direction. And it's really ironic because Tom has 40 plus new patients per month. That's like a really healthy organic number with no external spend. Tom also owns the space next door, but doesn't it's like, could you move in, do a big construction project? There's all of that stuff. And what we ended up deciding, and this is where, Tom is at a point in his life, and there's a book, I really like this book called Die with Zero. I think it's an excellent, it just really helped me understand how our financial need changes with our life cycle. So, as you're younger, you have less need. Once you have a family, you have more need. As your kids get older, you have more financial need, depending on if you're paying for their college or not, a lot more need. And then in your later years, your financial needs kind of go down. And so Tom has sort of self-identified that I'm in a period of time where I have a high financial need personally. My kids are in that sweet spot where, they're expensive. And, Tom has a lot of kids. And so I think that's one thing that really tailored my advice. And the other thing is, on the clinical entrepreneur spectrum, I almost would put Tom in the middle, maybe a slant towards the entrepreneurial side. But I think that there's a very even balance between clinical desire and entrepreneurial, desire. There's definitely, I find it balanced. And so what I've suggested for Tom, which we're going to talk about in the second part, is we call it the patient flow path to a group practice. So it's essentially like a very slow and steady progression towards a group. And this would allow Tom to long-term work towards Tom's goals of having that group practice. But then at the same time, it doesn't put too much pressure on the financial element of going from a solo to group, essentially taking away that ugly duckling period. And so what we're going to talk about next time is right-sizing the schedule, getting to that Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4, no Fridays, and also making that progression towards a group practice where at a later point in Tom's life, Tom's going to come with a wind of energy and say, all right, I'm ready to go. Let's go to a group. And then we're gonna have the practice pre-primed for that transition so that he can make that transition seamlessly, and hopefully in the later years of retirement, maybe even cut back with associate and eventually sell the practice. So that's kind of where we're going in part 2, and that's the direction. So Tom, how does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Well, so brief. So we'll see you guys next time. I hope you guys enjoyed this. The thing I love about Practice Underwater is no two are the same. And so I think that this episode very much encompasses that ethos. So thanks for listening to today's episode of Practice Underwater. And I'm going to take a halftime break with Tom, and then we're going to come back. We're going to record part 2 where we're going to talk about, all right, this is a great plan. Sounds awesome. How do we do it? And we'll talk about that in part 2. So thanks for listening today, and we'll see you back next week on another episode of the Shared Practices Podcast.